The story of Prophet Ibrahim before prophethood begins long before the fire, long before the test of the sun, long before the Kaaba, before any miracle or message would shape his name into history. It begins with a boy who grew up in a world dominated by noise. The noise of rituals, the noise of kings, and the noise of minds too afraid to question. This boy, young Ibrahim, lived in a society where idols stood taller than humans and silence before them was treated as faith. Yet, within this child, a spark formed, a quiet stubbornness, a natural resistance to blindly obey what never felt right. He didn't start as a leader or a visionary. He started as the kid who asked inconvenient questions at the wrong time. The kind of kid who listened to stories of mighty idols, but only heard contradictions. The kind who walked home from gatherings replaying conversations in his head, convinced that something about his world simply didn't add up. Before prophethood, Ibrahim's greatest struggle wasn't with kings. It was with loneliness. To question everything when everyone else bows comfortably is a burden that matures a soul too early. His journey began not with revelation, but with doubt. From the moment he could walk beside adults, Ibrahim noticed how people moved through life with rehearsed certainty. They bowed before statues carved hours earlier and feared gods that needed constant maintenance, gods who needed dusting, repainting, and repositioning. These statues were treated with sacred devotion, yet they were fragile enough to break if dropped. Even as a child, the contradiction bothered him like a buzzing mosquito. His father, Azar, proudly crafted idols and considered it a noble profession. To him, the statues represented livelihood, culture, identity, even honor. But to Ibrahim, each idol was a silent block of stone pretending to hold power it didn't possess. He'd watch customers choose idols the way people choose clothing, based on size, shape, and personality. He'd watch his father speak highly of them, each with a story, each with supposed ability. And while the adults placed faith in these lifeless objects, young Ibrahim quietly observed. He wasn't rebellious. He was curious, a child with a brain that refused to settle for, because that's how we do it. His internal conflict grew daily. But he kept his questions tucked inside, waiting for the moment he'd understand why everyone was committed to this grand performance. At night, when the village darkened and the fires dimmed, Ibrahim often slipped outside to think. The sky was his escape, a world so wide, so mysterious, so undeniably real. No chisel had shaped it, no craftsman had painted it, and no human owned it. The stars twinkled with genuine beauty, unlike the glittering gems glued onto idols. The moon glowed with gentle authority, never demanding worship, yet holding power over tides and moods. These were creations that felt alive, felt purposeful, felt authentic. As Ibrahim sat under the sky, he wondered how the same people who admired this vast universe for perfection turned around and bowed to statues that couldn't even lift themselves. The contrast tugged at him. The more he stared at the heavens, the more he sensed that truth wasn't found in the temples or shrines. It was above them. The night sky became his secret teacher. Its silence encouraged him to think. Its patterns encouraged him to question. And its immensity told him one thing with certainty. Whatever created all this wasn't made of stone and clay. That thought alone pulled him further from the beliefs of his people, setting the stage for the man he would become. Despite the questions brewing inside him, Ibrahim maintained a gentle demeanor. He wasn't confrontational or hostile. He helped his father with chores, listened to elders with respect, and played with children his age. But he carried a quiet awareness that separated him from them. At gatherings, he observed how people laughed and celebrated around their idols, placing food, perfumes, and gifts before them. To the crowd, it felt meaningful. To Ibrahim, it felt like adults playing pretend, but refusing to admit it. Yet he kept his thoughts to himself, not wanting to wound his father or embarrass anyone. There were moments he tried rationalizing their beliefs, wondering if he was too young to understand. Perhaps there was a hidden wisdom behind it all. But every attempt ended with the same question echoing in his mind. How can something humans create a power over them? Still, he carried his uncertainty silently, not out of fear but out of compassion. He didn't want to hurt those he cared about. Instead, he watched and waited, hoping one day something would make sense, or someone would explain things in a way that connected. But that explanation never came. pushing him deeper toward his own path. Azar, his father, was a respected craftsman in their society. He shaped clay and stone with pride, carving intricate details that made each idol appear unique. He often involved Ibrahim in the process, hoping to pass the craft down to him. While working, he'd talk about their gods as if they were real beings with preferences, moods, and demands. Ibrahim listened silently, his hands molding clay but his heart resisting every word. The more he helped craft idols, the more absurd the idea became to him. To shape something with his own hands and then watch others worship it felt backward. He once held a half-carved statue and thought, if I drop this, it breaks. How can something breakable protect anyone? But he never said it aloud. Azar genuinely trusted these idols, and the last thing Ibrahim wanted was to mock his father's livelihood. Yet every day in the workshop strengthened his conviction that something was deeply wrong with the world around him. He was surrounded by people who mistook tradition for truth, and he felt like the only one seeing the emptiness. The emotional weight of his realization was heavy, but he carried it quietly, waiting for clarity. As Ibrahim grew older, the distance between him and the beliefs of his people widened. His questions matured, his observations sharpened. He no longer saw idol worship as harmless tradition. It felt like a collective sleepwalking. He noticed how quickly people turned to idols in times of fear or need, yet never questioned why those idols remained motionless. He noticed how priests claimed authority based on interpretations of the idol's supposed desires. The entire system depended on people not thinking too deeply. And thinking deeply was exactly what Ibrahim couldn't avoid. He once watched a group of men panic when one idol accidentally fell and shattered. They rushed to gather its pieces, as though trying to save a dying leader. Standing aside, he whispered to himself, if it cannot save itself, how can it save you? But he kept the thought hidden. Though frustrated, he wasn't eager to spark conflict. He felt a growing responsibility, not to argue, but to seek truth wherever it was hiding. And truth, as he sensed, was far too grand to be trapped within the walls of a temple. Something bigger was calling him, a reality that didn't depend on elaborate rituals or carved stone, a truth that felt alive. Despite the confusion swirling inside him, Ibrahim found comfort in small things. He enjoyed helping travelers find their way, sharing water with strangers, offering kindness without expectation. People liked him because he was sincere, grounded, and thoughtful. But beneath his warm interactions was a restless spirit. At night, the restlessness grew louder. He often climbed hills outside the town, seeking quiet from the noise of rituals and markets. Up there, far from the clamor, he studied the landscape, mountains, trees, running streams. These were creations that demanded no offerings, no incense, no chants. Yet they functioned with flawless harmony. Who controls this harmony, he wondered. Who commanded the sun to rise? Who taught birds to fly? Each question pushed him further away from idols and closer to the unseen creator he sensed without fully understanding. Though he had no revelation yet, no divine voice guiding him, there was an intuition, an inner compass, that kept pointing upward away from the manufactured gods of his people. This silent connection to the universe brought him a peace he never found in temples. It reassured him that he wasn't lost. He was searching, and searching, he believed, was better than blindly following. In his teenage years, Ibrahim's thoughts sharpened to the point they could no longer be contained. One day, his father asked him to deliver newly crafted idols to market. He carried them carefully, but felt a strained frustration building with each step. When a customer asked him which idol was more powerful, Ibrahim couldn't help but answer honestly. "They're the same," he said. "Both are made of stone. Neither can help or harm anyone." The man stared at him in disbelief. But before a crowd could form, Ibrahim walked away. This was the first time he had allowed truth to slip out publicly, and it startled him. He wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. His words just fell out naturally. That night, his father confronted him, upset that he jeopardized the family's business. Ibrahim stayed quiet, not wanting to argue, but inside he felt a shift. He realized that suppressing the truth was becoming impossible. The more he grew, the heavier the burden felt. His mind refused to accept illusions. His heart refused to pretend. And slowly, he understood that silence wasn't sustainable, not forever. One day, his thoughts would inevitably collide with the practices of his people. Things took a dramatic turn when the kingdom announced a grand festival dedicated to idol worship. The entire city buzzed with excitement. Music, colors, food, everything was designed to celebrate the gods of stone. Azar encouraged Ibrahim to attend, hoping the festivities would soften his son's skepticism. But Ibrahim felt uneasy. The festival felt less like devotion and more like a distraction, a way to keep people from questioning anything. As crowds prepared to leave for the celebration outside the city, Ibrahim made a choice that would change everything. Instead of joining them, he stayed behind, wandering alone among the rows of silent idols. The empty temple felt eerily peaceful. He looked at each statue, some tall, some small, some decorated with jewels, and felt a mix of sadness and disbelief. People had given their lives to these objects. They sacrificed time, wealth, and emotional attachment to things that couldn't even blink. This festival, meant to glorify the idols, only exposed to Ibrahim how hollow the entire system was. He walked through the temple feeling more certain than ever that truth lived somewhere beyond these walls. Standing alone before the idols, a bold thought entered Ibrahim's mind. What if they were forced to prove themselves? Not with theories, not with dramatic rituals, but with a simple test of existence. If they were truly gods, they would defend themselves. If they remained still, their silence would expose the truth the people refused to see. Driven by raw conviction, not rebellion, he lifted a small axe and approached the idols. One by one, he struck them down, smashing their fragile bodies into pieces. The sound echoed through the empty hall, not with guilt, but with clarity. When he reached the largest idol, he paused. Instead of destroying it, he hung the axe around its neck and walked away. It wasn't vandalism, it was a question, a silent, deliberate question meant for the entire kingdom. By the time the people returned, he was already outside, watching from a distance as they gasped, screamed, and panicked at the sight. Their gods had fallen. Their strongest idol stood with an axe around its neck, as if accused. And for the first time in his life, Ibrahim no longer felt alone in his thoughts. The truth had spoken without saying a word. Chaos erupted in the city as priests rushed around trying to explain the destruction. People cried for justice, demanded answers, and insisted someone must pay. Deep down, fear gnawed at them. If the idols couldn't protect themselves, what did that say about the life they had built around them? The priests called for an investigation, though the truth was embarrassingly obvious. When questioned, Ibrahim didn't hesitate. With a calm voice, he said, "Ask the big one. He has the axe." The crowd stared at him, stunned. His answer felt like an insult to their intelligence. "You know it cannot speak," they shouted. And it was in this moment, this heated exchange, that a truth they had always avoided came crashing down on them. If the idol couldn't speak, couldn't defend itself, couldn't move, why worship it? But pride is powerful. Admitting they were wrong felt too humiliating. So instead of acknowledging the truth staring them in the face, they turned their anger toward Ibrahim. He became the problem, not the idols. Fear turned into fury. Logic was replaced with ego, and the crowd demanded punishment. The king himself, Nimrod, was informed of the incident. Known for his arrogance and hunger for control, he ruled through intimidation. He claimed divine authority, insisting that he, too, was a god, the idea that a young man had challenged the entire belief system, and by extension his own authority, infuriated him. Summoning Ibrahim, he expected fear, trembling, and apology, but Ibrahim arrived with calm eyes and steady breath. Nimrod questioned him, demanding explanations. Instead of backing down, Ibrahim answered with composed honesty that unsettled everyone in the room. He spoke of the idol's inability to help or harm, highlighting the obvious truth the kingdom had been hiding behind tradition. The more he spoke, the more the king felt threatened, not by weapons or rebellion, but by truth. Simple, undeniable truth that could shake an empire built on lies. Ibrahim's calmness was dangerous. It meant he wasn't intimidated. It meant he had clarity. And clarity in the hands of a single person can ignite revolutions. Unable to argue logically with him, Nimrod resorted to power. He declared Ibrahim a threat to the kingdom. Nimrod's court buzzed with voices, each suggesting punishment. Some demanded exile. Others wanted Ibrahim imprisoned. A few whispered more extreme measures. The priests, afraid of losing their influence, pushed for the harshest punishment possible. He disrespected the gods, they argued. He broke the foundation of our faith. In reality, what he broke was their authority, their status, their control. The king, craving a display of dominance, agreed to something extreme. He ordered a massive fire to be built, one large enough to serve as a warning to anyone who dared question the kingdom again. Word spread quickly. People gathered with day and night, the flames growing taller and hotter than anything ever seen. Villagers crowded around, some cheering, others trembling. They tied Ibrahim with ropes, preparing to cast him into the inferno. Through it all, Ibrahim remained composed, not because he had divine protection he knew about, but because deep down he believed truth never needed to fear falsehood. Even in the face of fire, his heart felt strangely calm. Before prophethood, before revelation, before miracles, there was only conviction. As the fire grew, people from neighboring towns gathered to witness the spectacle. The heat was so intense that no one could approach it closely. They had to build a massive catapult just to throw Ibrahim inside. The entire scene looked like a kingdom trying too hard to protect a lie. A young man with no army, no weapon, no followers. Yet they built a fire of unparalleled size just to silence him as they prepared the catapult. Some people watched with guilt. They admired Ibrahim's courage, but feared the consequences of siding with him. Others were excited, eager to see the display of justice. Mixed emotions filled the atmosphere like smoke. Ibrahim's father stood in the crowd, conflicted. He loved his son, yet his loyalty to tradition blinded him. Though his heart wavered, his feet stayed planted among the idol worshippers. Meanwhile, Ibrahim looked at the sky, not in panic, but in quiet surrender. He whispered no dramatic speech. He didn't try to escape. His stillness itself was powerful enough to unsettle those who condemned him. There was something unshakable about him, something that made the fire feel small in comparison. Before they launched him into the flames, a man from the crowd stepped forward, one of the few who couldn't bear the injustice. He was Azar's old friend, a man who always admired Ibrahim's character. He shouted, "What has he done except tell the truth you all refuse to see?" But the crowd silenced him. Their fear of the king outweighed their conscience. As the man was dragged away, his words lingered in the air like a final attempt to wake the people up. The catapult was released. Ibrahim soared through the sky toward the roaring inferno. In that moment, he felt something indescribable, an overwhelming sense of peace, as if the world around him slowed down. Though he had no revelation at this stage of his life, something deep within whispered reassurance. And the moment he approached the flames, the impossible happened. The fire became cool. The inferno that was meant to destroy became a sanctuary. The ropes burned away while his skin remained untouched. People gasped, eyes widened. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind. This moment would mark the turning point, not just in their history, but in his life. The crowd stood frozen as they watched Ibrahim sit calmly inside what should have been an inferno. Flames danced around him like harmless ribbons of color, but none touched his skin. The heat felt cold, the fire felt soft, and the very air around him shimmered with a strange tranquility. People rubbed their eyes, convinced they were hallucinating. Priests whispered panic theories to each other, trying to salvage their authority with explanations that made no sense. Some insisted it was sorcery. Others claimed the gods were testing them. Yet deep inside, everyone knew what this meant. Their entire belief system had just been shattered in one silent moment. Even Nimrod, sitting on his elevated throne overlooking the scene, felt a cold chill despite the blazing flames. His jaw tightened as he watched the boy he tried to destroy sit inside the fire like it was a garden. This wasn't just a miracle. It was a message, one that exposed the weakness of their idols and the limits of their king. And although Ibrahim didn't yet know that prophethood awaited him, this moment marked the beginning of a journey that no human force could stop. When the fire eventually died down, Ibrahim stepped out unharmed. His clothes were intact, not even the hem charred. The crowd parted in stunned silence, unsure whether to run or bow. Some people felt awe, others felt fear, but above all, they felt confusion. Everything they had believed in, everything they had defended, now felt flimsy. Ibrahim didn't make a speech. He didn't confront the king. He didn't gloat. He simply walked away with calm, steady footsteps, as if leaving a room rather than an execution ground. This quiet confidence made even his enemies tremble. Nimrod watched him go, his pride wounded. He was a king who claimed divinity, yet he couldn't burn a single young man. The priests scrambled to regain control, spreading new rumors to dilute the miracle. But no lie could fully cover what people had seen with their own eyes. Something had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted in every heart. And while many tried to bury it under fear and tradition, the truth had already taken root. Ibrahim returned home not as a hero, but as a man whose inner conviction had just been confirmed by the universe. Life after the fire became complicated. Some villagers avoided Ibrahim altogether, afraid to be associated with him. Others approached him secretly, asking questions they once feared to voice. What gave you such courage? How did you know the fire wouldn't harm you? Who protects you? Ibrahim didn't have dramatic answers. He simply spoke from the heart. I just follow what feels true, he said. And truth doesn't need fear. His words weren't lectures. They were natural, genuine, relatable. Even children noticed that something about him felt different. Not mystical, not intimidating, just real. Meanwhile, the castle buzzed with tension. Nimrod felt increasingly threatened by Ibrahim's existence. Every day, the king heard whispers about the miracle, and every whisper chipped at his authority. He considered imprisoning Ibrahim. He considered banishing him. But he also feared that harming him again might expose his weakness once more. So he stayed still, watching, waiting for an opportunity to regain control. Ibrahim, however, didn't dwell on politics. He focused on what mattered, continuing his search for the one who protected him. A fireproof miracle didn't end his journey. It accelerated it. As time passed, Ibrahim continued his habit of observing the world around him. He watched people chase wealth, power, and status, like children chasing shadows that disappeared as soon as they touched them. He saw how people feared losing things that weren't truly theirs to begin with. He realized that humans often worship not idols, but desires, things they believed would make them feel secure. In this sense, even those who didn't bow to statues were often still worshippers at heart. This realization deepened his understanding of human nature. It wasn't just stone idols that made people blind. It was attachment, pride, and fear. Ibrahim, however, wanted something real, something that didn't fade or crumble. At night, he continued to study the stars. One evening, he saw a bright star shining intensely. For a brief moment, he thought, "Could this be my Lord?" But when the star faded, he shook his head. I do not love those that set. He looked for something constant, something beyond rise and fall. His journey wasn't about rejecting what he saw. It was about finding something worthy of devotion, something greater than creation itself. Another night, he saw the moon rising, glowing beautifully across the horizon. Its light washed over the land like a soothing blanket. People admired the moon, celebrated its phases, and even considered it a deity. For a moment, he marveled at its beauty. This is magnificent, he thought. Could this be the true power behind the world? But as dawn approached, the moon pulled back, dimmed, and disappeared. Once again, he whispered to himself, "If it disappears, it cannot be the truth I'm seeking." His mind worked with clarity and honesty. He didn't deny beauty. He just refused to worship what was temporary. The moon, like the star, was a sign, not a lord. These reflections weren't dramatic revelations. They were simple moments of clarity that any sincere person could relate to. The more he observed, the more he learned. The universe felt like a vast puzzle, each piece pointing towards something bigger, something unseen yet undeniable. And with each passing night, he felt himself drawing closer to the one who created every light in the sky. Then came the night of the sun, clear skies, no clouds, and a sunrise so powerful it felt like the world was being painted anew. As the sun climbed higher, its brilliance overwhelmed everything. Shadows vanished. Colors deepened. The warmth spread across the land. Many people worshipped the sun openly, believing no other power could match its strength. Ibrahim stood on a hill, staring at the sky as light poured across the horizon. This must be the greatest of them, he thought for a moment. Its power is undeniable. But as evening approached and the sun began to descend, he watched its light weaken. When it finally vanished, leaving darkness in its wake, he felt the same familiar truth settle in his heart. "If it sets," he whispered, "it cannot be my Lord." Each observation pulled him closer to the same conclusion. Anything that rises and sets, begins and ends, appears and disappears cannot be the ultimate truth. His journey wasn't fueled by defiance. It was fueled by sincerity. He was searching for something eternal, and everything he tested, no matter how magnificent, fell short. After these reflections, Ibrahim felt an unshakable certainty rise inside him. He turned his attention away from the creations and toward the Creator behind them. For the first time, he felt a direct connection, not through rituals, not through idols, not through priests, but through his own heart. He realized that truth didn't need decorations or ceremonies. It didn't need a temple or a statue. It simply needed honesty. He raised his hands toward the sky and said, "I turn my face to the one who created the heavens and the earth." These words didn't come from scripture or tradition. They came from pure instinct, from the clarity of a heart untangled from illusions, from a mind unafraid to question, from a soul searching for meaning. It was in this moment that the foundations of his future prophethood were laid, not through miracles, not through revelations, but through sincere reflection. The world around him felt different now. The sky seemed closer. The earth felt purposeful. Everything began to make sense. And although he had no followers, no support, and no guidance from society, he felt a certainty more powerful than any crowd or kingdom. Ibrahim's newfound conviction didn't go unnoticed. His father sensed a shift, sensing that his son's heart had grown distant from the traditions of their people. One evening, Azar confronted him, frustrated. "Why do you reject the ways of your ancestors?" he demanded. "Why do you insult our gods? Why can't you just follow what everyone else follows?" Ibrahim listened silently before responding with calm sincerity. "Father, I cannot pretend to believe in what my heart knows is false." His words weren't meant to criticize. They were simply honest. But Azar, driven by pride and fear of societal judgment, refused to hear him. Their relationship grew strained, weighed down by tension. Ibrahim loved his father deeply, but he couldn't force himself into the mold society expected of him. He understood that challenging beliefs didn't only discomfort priests, it discomforted families too. Rejecting idols meant rejecting traditions, which meant rejecting identity. And for many, that was too heavy to accept. But Ibrahim knew that truth sometimes required walking alone, even when the path felt cold and lonely. And though he wished his father would understand, he accepted that not everyone is ready for clarity at the same time. One afternoon, while walking through the outskirts of the town, Ibrahim met a group of travelers resting under the shade of a palm tree. They were debating loudly about life, destiny, and the purpose of existence. Their discussion was chaotic, full of contradictions and exaggerated philosophies. When they noticed Ibrahim passing by, they called him over, expecting entertainment. "Young man," one of them said mockingly, "you seem thoughtful. Tell us, what do you worship?" Ibrahim looked at them calmly and replied, "I worship the one who created everything you see." The group laughed, amused by what they thought was a vague answer. But when they tried pressing him, asking questions flippantly, they found his responses too straightforward to mock. He spoke with clarity, not arrogance, with humility, not superiority. The more he spoke, the quieter they became. His presence didn't dominate. It stabilized. After the conversation, one traveler admitted, "I don't fully understand you, but I know you're not like the others." Ibrahim smiled and continued on his way, unaware that this brief encounter would linger in their minds long after he left. His influence didn't come from miracles. It came from authenticity. Unbeknownst to the village, the heavens were preparing for a monumental moment. While Ibrahim stood at the edge of a hill overlooking the land, he sensed something shift, something unseen yet unmistakable. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. It felt like clarity turning into purpose, like a whisper forming into certainty. The years of searching, questioning, challenging, and reflecting had shaped him into someone ready to receive truth directly. His heart had been softened by empathy, strengthened by courage, sharpened by thought, and purified by sincerity. These were the qualities of a prophet, though he didn't know it yet. He simply stood there, letting the wind brush past him, unaware that the first divine revelation was near. His journey until now had been a human one, filled with doubt, curiosity, loneliness, courage, and reflection. But the next part of his story would no longer be merely human. It would be divine, and though the world didn't know it, it was about to gain a guide unlike any other. And so, the story of Prophet Ibrahim before prophethood ends not with fire, not with confrontation, not with miracle, but with a man standing on the edge of destiny, ready without knowing he is ready. His journey up to this moment was shaped by honesty, questioning, and the courage to stand against illusions. He had faced kings, challenged traditions, survived flames, and searched the heavens for answers. He found truth not in temples or rituals, but in sincerity. And sincerity led him to the doorstep of revelation. What comes next is a story the world already knows, of prophethood, sacrifice, migration, faith, and legacy. But before all of that, he was simply Ibrahim, a young man who dared to seek meaning in a world full of noise, a seeker whose heart guided him long before revelation descended. And sometimes, the most extraordinary stories begin with ordinary questions, asked by one person brave enough to follow where the truth leads.